There's enough space. All right. Who's awake? All right. Pretty cool. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here. And I have probably way too much information and material for today. So if I speed up, it's just because I'm trying to constrain things. I do not also want you to wait until the end to ask me questions. We're going to be asking questions throughout. This is going to be interactive. This is not a normal type of presentation where you guys just sit and listen to me and I just talk all day. I can do that. I have been known to do that. However, what I want you to be able to do is take this information and apply it. It is also not just a presentation about what dementia is. Right? We're not going to talk about that so much today. We're going to look at this through a different lens. All right? You guys ready? Now I've got to find my little button. Well, now the HDMI doesn't want to work. All righty. So who is today's presentation for? It is for Christ-centered caregivers. How many of you guys feel like you're spinning plates? Right. Okay. So we're spinning our plates. We're trying to balance health, life, faith, our marriages, our relationships. It is also for families who are looking for clarity. How many of you guys have tried to build a puzzle without a box? It can kind of feel like this sometimes when we are going through this journey, that we don't have all the pieces or we don't have the picture of what it is that we're trying to build. This is also for families who are trying to be faithful planners, right? Any of you guys ever go on vacation without a map or a road map to know where you're going? Well, dementia and dementia caregiving can feel a lot like you are trying to navigate this without a map. All right, so today's presentation is a little unique and different, and I always tell people it's because I'm unique and different. I'm very unique and different. This is a relational model of caregiving. It is not a medical model of caregiving. There's a major big difference, and Mitch kind of touched on it a little bit because right at the beginning when I started working with him, I still firmly had my feet planted in the medical model, very firmly. Everything was related to techniques and strategies, etc. And then over this last little bit, it has shifted into a relational model of caregiving. It's kind of like trying to fix your marriage with a prescription pill. It's not going to work. This model of caregiving is also biblical. Dementia caregiving in specific is not neutral, right? There are a lot of factors that are coming to play. It's trying to put together a plan or build a house when you don't have a level. I don't know why it keeps doing that. We will try not to bump it again. Alrighty, and today's presentation is supposed to be transformational. This is not just information. Caregiving is not about information anymore. You can Google the information you need. You can find out every single piece of information you need to have to be a caregiver. The problem is, what do you do with that information? How do you actually apply it to your lives? So it's kind of like trying to find a book with a compass in the library. It doesn't work real well. Alrighty, so an hour and a half, 2 hours is really not enough. It's taken me 32 years to learn this information. I guarantee you there's not enough time for me to tell you everything I know in this presentation. If it's okay with you guys, at the end, if you want to know more, I can show you or tell you how to work with me. Okay? Alrighty. So, being here in and of itself is not enough either. Seriously? You have to take action, right? My request of you today is that when you leave this presentation, you actually take action on some piece of information, something that you have learned today, in order to apply it to your lives. This is not just about information. We have to take action. Alrighty, so what is the world's view of dementia? I'm going to throw that thing. Is it both that's flickering or just the one? Both. Okay. All righty. So, what is the world's view of dementia? How many of you guys have ever heard people say things like, that person's not there anymore, or they're not the same person? Well, the world tells us that dignity is distorted, kind of like a picture fading. So that's the first thing, how this that we're going to look at related to what the world says about dementia. The second thing is it talks about order being disrupted. How many of you guys have heard people say it's confusing? There's no order to it. You've seen one person with dementia, you've seen one person, right? That's the pervasive thing. Well, I would just like to remind us, if you've seen one person, you've seen one person, right? Just because there are a lot of things that we don't necessarily know or understand does not mean that it is confusing. Order disrupted is kind of like trying to dance when they keep turning the music into a different song. Makes it really hard. And it is the truth disguised. Who here has heard about therapeutic lying? Yeah, but you were there on Tuesday. So, the world actually teaches a technique that is called therapeutic lying. And so we're going, it's kind of like they've distorted the truth, like being at a fun house, and all of the mirrors are distorted. So, what is God's view of dementia? Have any of you ever stopped to think about it? Okay, so what does God say about dementia? We are born we are created in the image of God, right? And so therefore we have value, not because we think. The world tells us because you cannot think, you do not have as much value as you used to, right? Dignity restored. It's like God put his seal on us. Stop it. And because of that, we have value. And that person living with dementia has value all the way through to the end of their journey. The second thing is, God is a God of order. God is not a God of confusion. There is order to dementia. And the third thing is, we can tell the truth. We do not need to lie to people living with dementia. We can show them dignity throughout this process. We can have order in our homes, and we never need to lie in order to keep the peace. So, my story started in 1990-something at a hospital in South Africa called Weskoppies, which literally means the Western Hills. It had another name. It was called the Green Roof. It was the place where all the Cuckoo for Cocoa Puff people were sent, right? And so I started my journey as an occupational therapist in the medical model. I can tell you everything about dementia. I can tell you that there are over 100 subtypes of dementia. I can tell you what medications are, all of these kinds of things. But then my dad got sick towards the tail end of COVID. And all of a sudden, me, who knows everything about the medical model, is standing there saying, oh boy, this sucks. I don't know what to do, right? I had all of the head knowledge. Every single, I can tell you anything about it. But then it became all about me, right? Because guess what? You do have to have balance. You do have to take care of yourself. You do have to eat well. You do need to do all of these things. But it became all about me. And then I stepped into what is called the caregiver-centric model. So there is a medical model of caregiving. I'm going to try to see if I can get that thing to stop. There's a medical model of caregiving. It does not like me. And then there is a caregiver-centric model of caregiving. And then I'm like, this is not working either, right? So the medical model isn't working. It has some truth. The caregiver-centered model, it's all about me. I'm getting burned out. I'm overwhelmed. I'm freaked out. I don't know what I'm doing, is not working either. And I'm like, okay, Lord, what does work? And so that took me to where I am now, where I realized caregiving, and dementia caregiving in specific, starts with your relationship, and not with your relationship with the person that you're taking care of, but actually with your relationship with God. And then it starts with the relationship of the people that you're taking care of. All right, so who knows who Patch Adams was? Patch Adams was. Okay, we need to start treating the patient as well as the disease. I use a lot of Patch Adams quotes because Patch Adams was played in a movie by Robin Williams. Robin Williams was diagnosed after he passed away with Lewy body dementia. So we need to look at the person as well as the disease. What that brought me to, and Mitch was through the beginning iteration of this is the journey a Christian takes as a caregiver. The first thing is, it's a calling. The second thing is, we've got to know where we're going. We've got to be clear about where we're going. The third thing is, we need to be able to assess where we are, because if we don't know where we are, we don't know what we need to change. Then we need to learn how to steward this journey. And there's three things that we have to steward, because the Lord made each of us different. The first thing is we have to steward our resources. It's finances, humans, everything. The second thing we do have to steward is our skills. It does take skills to take care of somebody, right? And then the third thing that we have to steward is ourself. We cannot we cannot sleep. We cannot take rest. We have to do these things. And then throughout this process, you grow in this journey in your sanctification. That is what a caregiving journey from a biblical perspective looks like. So we're going to look at this in 5 temptations because I thought it was fun to do this in a church. The first thing that we're going to look at is many people believe caregiving just happens to you, like it's a detour. Has anybody ever felt like that? You don't need to put up your hand, but I want you to ask yourselves, like, have you thought things like, I didn't ask for this. I don't have a choice, right? Sometimes things like, I'm resentful. Those are all, they can be signs or symptoms that we feel like this is a detour, as opposed to this is a part of who God is making me into, which is more like Jesus, right? So, the second part of my story is I've actually been a family caregiver from the age of 19. I came home from an outing with some friends, and there was an ambulance in the road in front of our house. My mom at 42 had a massive aneurysm and a stroke, right? I was already in OT school. This is in the early 1990s, this was 1989, which means we didn't have the words family caregiver. It was, my mom had a stroke. My dad fell, right? We didn't, the word concept family caregiver or caregiver has been coined later on, but if you actually go back through Scripture, it's all throughout Scripture. Caregiving is all throughout Scripture. We just don't call it caregiving in the Bible, right? The blind person, somebody was helping him. The person who was picked up to be put into the water when it was churned up, he didn't do it himself. Somebody was helping him. There were caregivers, we just didn't call them caregivers, right? So my mom had this massive stroke. My dad was the primary caregiver. But it really, the reason I bring this up is because at the beginning of this journey, I'm very sure I didn't think, I didn't sign up for this, right? My parents emigrated from South Africa when my dad was 60 and my mom 62 and my mom was 60. They moved to the States because their 2 kids live in the States, and my dad knew that if something happened to him, my mom would need help, right? So caregiving is not random. It is a call to stewardship. It is an assignment from God to reflect his care, even in our suffering. So what is the truth? God calls us into these roles. Embracing that call will lead to contentment. Resisting or rejecting the external calling of being a caregiver leads to resentment. There's a great verse in Esther, and who knows whether you have not come into the kingdom as for such a time as this. Caregiving is not an accident, it is an assignment, and we are not victims of our circumstances, even though this is hard. We can either accept it or we can reject God's external calling. This is a different type of calling than pastors being called, right? We can have a conversation about that, but that's not what this is, right? This is an external thing that the Lord placed in our lives. Caregiving is a calling. How we experience that calling can be very different based on the spiritual reality between the caregiver and the person receiving care. That is something that we do not talk about. And so what we're going to look at real quick is a framework that I developed. A lot of this came from years, decades, 30 years of working with caregivers in hospitals, in homes, all over. And then always wondering, kind of, like the spidey senses in the back of your head, why does one couple do better than another, right? Same situation, going through something terrible. Why is one family doing okay and not another? And so over the years of starting to work outside of the medical model and looking at our own situation personally, because you'll hear about that here in a second, I started to recognize that one thing that we do not consider when we are caregivers is the spiritual relationship between us and the person that we're taking care of. So that's what we're going to look at. So at the bottom is the care receiver's Christian belief. So that person is a believer, and the person who is providing the care, or the caregiver, is a non-believer. Okay? So that's an unseen struggle. My mom was a smoldering wick. My dad is an atheist. Okay? She lived 55 years with a man who ended up walking away, grew up in the church, the whole 9 yards, but was an unbeliever. It was an unseen struggle. The second one is somebody who is unequally yoked. A little different context, but still. The caregiver is a believer, and the person receiving care is an unbeliever. That is me, right now. Because guess what? I did what I said I never would do, which was, I will not live with my dad. Right? In the span of an hour-long conversation with a woman that I help, I walked out of the room and said to my husband, we need to move in with my dad. The only person that can change a person's heart is the Lord, the Holy Spirit. Literally I've said for decades, I will not live with my dad. An hour later, let's move in with my dad. Okay? The third one, and this, how many of you guys are in huge, big Facebook groups online for dementia caregivers? I'm so glad I don't see hands going up. Spiritually dead. The person who is the caregiver and the person who is the care receiver, who are both not believers, right? And so why is this important? Because a lot of times, the people that we are meeting in the medical model do not necessarily come from a Christian worldview. I'm about 100%, I can guarantee you, I could walk into a patient's room and within 3 minutes flat tell you if they were a believer or not. Wow. Yep. So, spiritually dead. the reality of each person, situation, because of the spiritual reality of the person who's the caregiver and the person who is receiving the care, makes a significant difference. Then, the last one is those that are both spiritually alive, right? And it doesn't mean that it makes it easy. It just means that we have other tools available to us. Okay? Alrighty. So, a quick little activity. I'm going to step away from that. A quick little activity. On your piece of paper, most of you, if you are here, just because we are in the church, because we, the human standing right here, is in the church and a believer, does not mean that the people that we are caring for necessarily are. Or, for example, my daughter in February this year just came to us, 26 years old, and said, I've walked away from the faith, right? So just because these are family members doesn't mean that they are. Or it doesn't mean that you don't have siblings that are not believers, or if you're parents, that your kids are not necessarily all believers, right? So we can be in any one of these situations. So I want you to think of the primary relationship that you're in. Which one of those 4 quadrants are you guys in? Don't everybody look at me. You need to be writing something on a piece of paper. On that piece of paper, does everybody have something to write with? I brought crayons. All right, guys, I'm going to make you talk to me. I don't stand and talk all day. All right, I want you to mark where you think things are. Does everybody have a sheet? Okay, good. Have any of you ever thought about this? Have any of you guys ever thought about it in this way? Do you need a pen, Mom? You got one? Okay. You get it sorted, Mitch, or you just switched it off?
No, it's still on.
Okay. All right. Anybody want to share? Yes, ma'am.
Believer.
Okay.
For both.
Good. That's a wonderful.
Siblings.
All the siblings too?
Yep.
Okay. Who are you taking care of?
Well, it's at a distance. My brother Michael,
Uh-huh.
who is a Vietnam vet, he's the oldest of the siblings. Our parents are already in heaven.
Mm-hmm.
And he lives in Macon, Georgia with my twin sister and family, in an assisted living home
Okay.
there. He just recently made that move a month and a half ago.
Okay.
So, but I go on weekends once a month. I try to.
Do you know what kind of dementia?
No,
Okay.
no.
Alrighty. Good. That is, as hard as it is, it's still a blessing to know that all parties or most of the parties involved are believers. Anybody else want to share? Ooh, you making me talk? I'm going to talk. I will start to get people to talk to me. All right. How would it change my perspective if I received caregiving as a calling in the season rather as something I did not choose? Have you guys thought about that ever? Whether this is a volitional thing, something that you can choose or not? Anybody want to share? You guys are a tough crowd. Okay. All right. So every morning I want you guys to think about this. Lord, you've entrusted me with the care of whoever. Help me serve faithfully and not resentfully as an act of obedience to your call. Okay? All righty. The second thing is, this is the second temptation people have. People, when they are in the grind of caregiving, oftentimes say, I don't have time to think about the future. Right? It's kind of like trying to build a building without a blueprint. It's very difficult to know how to navigate this whole journey when you don't know where you are going. So what are some signs of this? Feeling like I'm just putting out fires all day. No time to think about the future. No time to think about the future. or if I can just get through today, that'll be good enough. Okay? So, let me tell you about, have any of you guys ever seen this statistic? That about 33% of caregivers actually pass away before the person that they're taking care of. Okay? The reality of the matter is, this is a very hard statistic to get. I've specifically related to dementia caregiving, I've seen 19% and 42%, right? So just took kind of did bad math. 33 looked really good on the slide, right? The reality is that caregivers stop going to the doctor. They do not take care of themselves. They really struggle, and then it's hard to figure out the statistic because we have multiple different types of caregivers. We have spousal caregivers. We have adult daughters or sons who are caregivers. There is a category of caregivers they're called young adult caregivers. A parent might be diagnosed with early onset dementia, right? And the kids are between the ages of 19 and 42. They're still working, they're still trying to raise their own kids, they are trying to put their kids through school, right? So we have lots of different types of caregivers. And so finding a statistic like this is very difficult. But let me tell you about Pam. So when Pam, that's Pam with her mom, she was in our community with Mitch. She has a support group at Hampton Park Baptist Church. And when she met me, she literally took me to a Starbucks, and then it was game on. She wanted to know before she put me in front of her support group that I wasn't, crazy. And so by the end of the conversation, I actually asked her one question. And I'm like, what do you want your life to look like when you're finished with your caregiving journey? Because she had been in this journey for, by that time, 18 years. She had been an adult daughter caregiver of her dad. Distance, did not live with her dad until the latter part when she helped her mom take care of her dad. And then after her dad passed away, 2 years later, she became the caregiver of her mom, who was living with vascular dementia, right? And so I asked her, I said, what do you want your life to look like when you're finished with your caregiving journey? Because we are so focused on the here and now, we do not look up to see what we want our life to look like. If you are, I have a 59-year-old client who is a wife. Her husband is 59. He has early onset dementia. She works as a nurse practitioner at the hospital, and when her husband passes away, she's going to be 61 or 62 years old. She is a beautiful she'll be a beautiful 62-year-old woman. She is young enough to get remarried. She's not thinking about that now, right? And I understand that she's not thinking about that now. But if she does not take care of her health, she's inadvertently now put her children in the same position as she is, because they will be her caregiver. So if you are a spousal caregiver taking care of a husband or wife who is living with dementia and you don't take care of yourself, you put your kids in the same position. Because if you pass away, then who's going to take care of that person? So then we're going to talk about faithful caring. Caregiving is not just scrambling to survive today. We have to keep the end in view. You have to keep eternity in view, right? Because that's where we're headed. But we also have to keep the end of our caregiving journey in view. We cannot just be putting out fires and trying to survive today in this journey, because this is a part of your growth in sanctification in this process. So we forget, at least I did, that when we are both believers, right, part of my job in this journey is to help steward and shepherd the person that I'm caring for, their heart in this. So we have to keep that in mind too, particularly if both people are believers. The truth is, thank you, Mitch, if you treat a disease, you may win, you may lose. If you treat a person, I guarantee you, you will win every single time. It doesn't matter what the outcome is. So God calls us to seek his wisdom, not to just get through today. When we lose sight of the end, we don't know where we're going. And then Proverbs says, where there is no vision, the people perish. We have to know where we're headed. So faithful caregiving means pressing on towards God's future. It's twofold: finishing it faithfully here, right, and preparing for eternity. So I press on towards the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus. So, 6 months from today, if caregiving were easier, what does that look like in your life? Does it mean knowing what to do next? Because a lot of times people are confused about exactly what the next step is. Does it mean having more peace? I don't know about you guys, but family caregiving brings a lot of conflict, right? Or does it mean being more content, knowing that you've actually done this to God's glory, right? So caregiving is for your good and for God's glory. And we don't think about it that way. I don't know about you, but I never really did. So, a couple of you, what would 6 months from now, let me ask a couple questions. Who here is perhaps caring for a spouse? If you feel comfortable raising your hand. Okay? Who here are adult kids caring for a parent? Okay? Alrighty. And the rest of you guys are just here because I'm super interesting. All right. So, the adult daughters in the room, how many of you, what would make your caregiving journey easier? When you think about what it is that you're contending with, what if 6 months from today, if it were easier, what would that look like? Who's willing to share? Oh boy. Nobody's willing to share?
Well, it's technically my dad's wife.
Mm-hmm.
So we are just now moving on to more steps. And there's, no clarity.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of different family members involved, like you say. So a lot of potential for conflict, but so far it's been good.
Okay.
But just knowing what the next step looks like, because even with the doctor, there's not a lot of involvement. There's no involvement,
Mhm.
actually, even though she's been diagnosed. And just now getting her kids on board.
Mm-hmm.
So just knowing what the next step is, but also knowing how to handle it, because you mentioned lying.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some people that think you should lie, and I think I can think of several reasons why that would be a bad idea. So the lying and just knowing the next step and what to do.
For sure. So you have a complicated situation. It's a second marriage by the sounds of it. Your dad is your person, and the person he is caring for is his wife, who is living with dementia. She has kids, and you are there in the outskirts. Technically not your responsibility to take care of her, but you have a vested interest, because if taking care of her changes your dad's abilities, that means your dad passes away sooner, right? And you are concerned about the burden he's carrying, but there's all this other drama in the background. Did I get that nailed down?
That's right.
All right. Can you tell I've done this before? So the reality of the matter is caregiving situations can be very complex. So in your specific situation, I'll speak to that real quick if that's okay. Your primary role in this journey is to set your dad up for success by coaching him. That means you learn and you teach him so that he can learn to apply, right? So for example, the conversations with your dad need to go something like this. Dad, if you die tomorrow, who's going to take care of, I'm going to call her Susie. Lou. Okay, who's going to take care of Lou if you die tomorrow? They need to have a plan for that, because who is that person going to be? Is she go into an assisted living, a memory care, or is she going to live with her children? Her kids need to figure that out. Their responsibility is to come up with a plan for what happens to her should your dad pass away. Your job is to model to your dad strategies, techniques, and doing it in a different way, and learning and then going and applying it with him. Okay? Awesome. Alrighty. So, what do I want to keep in sight this season and in eternity so I don't lose track of the big picture, right? So for Lisa specifically, for you, Miss Lisa, the big picture is, if she passes away before your dad, does your dad still have enough health and well-being, or else you have now turned into a caregiver, right? You and your siblings have turned into caregivers. So that's the eye on the prize for you, is how do I help my dad stay well enough that when his caregiving journey is done, he hasn't turned me inadvertently into his caregiver. It's not from a selfish perspective. It's from a realistic, how do I solve this problem perspective. Alrighty, so I want you, we're not going to do this right now because I do want to get through all of the content, but when you go home, I want you guys who are actually caregivers, I want you to ask yourself that question. 6 months from today, if your caregiving journey looks easier, what needs to change? What do I need to do differently in order to achieve that goal? And it'll start to, because what the reason it's so overwhelming is because we don't know where to start. But if I can get people to answer that question, immediately it brings it down to the reality of, this is like, I need a plan. I need to know if Lou dies, what happens, or if my dad dies, what happens to her. So this'll help get you from out here into the next, into a closer circle. The third mistake or temptation that we make is believing if I slow down, everything is going to fall apart. Who here feels like that? I know I do, right? So how do we know we might be struggling with this? I literally had somebody tell me once, I'm like the Energizer Bunny. She said, I'm like the Energizer Bunny. I just keep going and going and going. Well, the reality is you can't keep going and going and going. Another way we know that we might be doing this is, I will deal with this later. I'm just trying to survive. Or if I slow down, it's all going to fall apart. If I stop spinning all these plates, it's all going to fall apart. Right? It's kind of like trying to drive a car with your foot on the gas pedal and the gas pedal stuck. What happens? You crash the car, right? Alrighty, so that was me crashing the car, because at the time that we started this caregiving journey, we lived over an hour away from my parents, both my mom and dad. My dad got sick. My dad was my mom's primary caregiver, and all of a sudden Lizette's in hot water, and it's no fun. And working 60 hours a week, trying to come up with a plan and just really recognizing that I did not know what my options were. They emigrated to the United States at 60 and 62. That means they brought everything they owned with them. Everything they owned. I kid you not. Paperwork from South Africa on houses that they sold in the 1990s. I'll circle round to that again. So I needed to know what all of my options were. So I started to assess it, right? So you have to assess where you are. You have to stop and look. Like Miss Lisa, we have to stop and look, what are the options? What are the possibilities, right? So we cannot feel bad about trying to look at the problem and solving it. Each person's situation is different, but the principles behind it are the same. And so faithful caregiving is not about the diagnosis and the tasks. Faithful caregiving is about the relationship. We have to keep the relationship intact. So we also have to see where we are, and then we have to honor using God's word and his wisdom and faithful stewardship of our relationships. So one of the biggest things related to therapeutic lying, I'll just kind of mention that real quick, is how many of you guys know when somebody's lying to you? Most of us can sense when somebody is not being truthful. We intuitively either know it, we sense it, we suspect it. People living with dementia are almost like a truth magnet. They will pick up on your emotional energy all day, every day. So if we're being deceptive because we're trying to keep this human happy, we fracture that relationship every single time. And the world will teach you to do what's called therapeutic lying. Where's my wife, right? Wife's long passed away. She went to the store, right? Not just like totally flat out fabricating a story, right? So I teach people a technique that I call therapeutic truth telling, which is asking questions. Where's my wife? Well, where do you think your wife is? Or, it sounds like you're missing your wife. Why don't you tell me about her? Instead of lying to the person because we are trying to placate them and not rock the boat, right? So anyway, I kind of digressed there. So the truth on the assessing. Scripture tells us that we're not supposed to keep going until we collapse, right? The Lord actually had to rest. He went away by himself and he rested. God created the world in 7 days, and what did he do on the seventh day? He rested. Who did he rest for? Not himself. He didn't need to rest. He rested for us. So I'm going to pick on Mitch for a second. That was one of the things we worked on a lot, was respite, making sure that he took time away, that he had built into the fabric of the day-to-day opportunities to rest. His son and his daughter-in-law did a great job of coming to pick her up once or twice a week and keeping her so that he could take breaks. Now, to be fair, Mitch's idea of rest and my idea of rest are not the same. Because he'd come in onto the call all sweaty, and I'm like, what you doing? Mowing the lawn? I'm like, dude, go rest. No, that's fun. I'm like, So that's when we had a little saying, Mitch will be Mitch. That was where it came from. Like, his idea of resting and my idea of resting were not the same. He would go riding bikes for miles. I'm like, you crazy, dude. So The Bible teaches us to number our days that we may get a heart of wisdom. All right, wisdom means pausing to assess before we move forward. For which of you desiring to build a tower does not first sit down and count the costs? All right, so 60% of adult female caregivers still work 30 plus hours a week. So who are the primary caregivers? The adult daughter. Even when they're spouses, it's the adult daughter who's in the background. All righty, so, and a quick activity. On your little thing, there are 5 directions. The first one is calling. The second one is clarity. The third one is assessing, knowing, what your situation is. The fourth one is called stewardship. And the last one is grow. In each of those, 1 is, I am not doing super good with this at all. And 5 is, I'm doing okay. I want you to just color in the little bar of where you are as a primary caregiver. Have you accepted the calling? 1 is no, maybe. 5 is yes. Do you know where you're going? What your options are? What you want your life to look like after caregiving? Do you know what your options are? Have you assessed your situation and seen where you're at? Do you know how to steward this journey well? And then how are you growing? How are you growing through this season? All right, so I want to see writing. I want to see a little bit of writing. Who wants a crayon or who wants a scented marker? I brought them with. Anybody want a crayon? Seriously. It's a tough crowd, Dan.
I think some people here probably are preparing in case they have to be a
Okay.
caregiver in the future.
That's good.
Or I am sometimes help people some caregivers who need assistance. So
Got it.
I don't actually have caregiving to do.
Okay. But do you have kids?
6 grown-up kids.
Okay. What happens if something happens to you and you need care? It does not just mean this is applicable for any person sitting here, even if you're not a caregiver right now. Because if something happens to this beautiful young lady right now and you need 24-hour care, have you thought of what your options are?
Kind of.
Okay, do your children know?
Well, they know that I pray that I'll just drop dead.
So that is a wonderful prayer. That is a wonderful prayer. I pray that happens. And if it doesn't, the reality is, because we're not talking about this at home, you've put your children in a very bad position. So, but they're grown on their own, and now their mom has a stroke and cannot take care of herself. What happens then? So now you're the person who's requiring care, and your children just became caregivers, right? We don't have these conversations. Nobody wants to have these conversations. We have to have these conversations early and often. Early and often, way before we need to. Because if there's no spouse who can be the person who's taking care of you, what are your options? What are your resources? Can you go to a facility? Do you prefer staying at home? Do you have the resources to do all of these things that you would prefer to do? You can apply these principles. These are principles that you can apply to yourself. It's not just for a dementia caregiver. It's not like people who are here who are anticipating what's coming. It's like having a financial planner, right? Everybody knows they need to plan for the future, for their finances, for when they retire, so they don't run out of money. unless you drop dead, the Lord comes, every single one of us in the room is going to be likely a caregiver or somebody needing care in the future. But we don't say that out loud. We never say that out loud. Alrighty, so if you are a caregiver, looking at your compass, where are you having a hard time? What have you not done yet? Are you struggling to accept the calling and saying out loud, I'm a caregiver? Or are you struggling with stewarding yourself? Do you have the skills that you need in order to be an effective caregiver to the person that you're providing care to? This is more for you guys to kind of see where you are. If you are adult daughters in the room and your parents are doing okay, what have you considered if they need help? What are you willing to do? Do you have a spouse, right? Is your spouse, if you're the wife, if you are the wife and you're taking care of your parents, what's your husband feel about it? What's the primary relationship? Leave and cleave. My primary relationship is with my husband. If my husband had said, I'm not moving in with your dad, guess what? We would have had to find another solution. I've had people come to me and tell me, my wife and my mother do not get along. His mom had dementia. The words, my wife and my mother do not get along, and then he moved his mom in. Anybody want to take a guess? What happened? You have to be looking at this whole ecosystem through a biblical lens. That's what today's really about. Alrighty. So, I do have a podcast. I love to hear the sound of my voice. I'm just joking. It's called Dementia Caregiver Support for Christians. If you are truly helping somebody living with dementia, that is what I would recommend where you start. Just start listening to the podcast. I do 2 types of episodes every week. The one is more a reflective, practical, applied theology type of an episode. Where does the rubber meet the road? Where is God in dementia? I'm struggling with my faith, right? Those kinds of things. And then the second episode are people coming onto the podcast who are actually caregivers of somebody living with dementia. And then they'll ask me questions and I will coach them through a situation. So that would be really an opportunity for you to kind of learn a little bit more about me. So the fourth mistake, sometimes the principle that we have to keep in mind is we believe that a good caregiver sacrifices everything. It's like trying to pour from an empty cup, right? How do you know you might be inadvertently feeling this or struggling with this? You feel guilty if you're taking time away for yourself, right? Or my health, my sleep, my marriage can wait. I'm a caregiver first. Or if I don't do it, nobody will, right? So those can be warning signs that you're getting ready to burn out. No one person can take care of somebody by themselves. No one person can take care of somebody living with dementia by themselves. How many of you guys have been around, moms having babies? Right? You know how much effort it takes to keep that human alive? That same level of effort is what it takes to help somebody on the other end of life. We don't expect that mom to do it by herself. But caregivers are often doing this by themselves. For a lot of variety of reasons. A lot of times they're not asking for help. They don't want people to know what they're struggling with at home. The person that they're taking care of says things like, I don't want anybody to know I've got dementia. Or even worse, I don't have dementia. Nothing wrong with me, right? But it's evident to the people around them. And so my advice, my recommendation to anybody when they first get a diagnosis is to actually tell the church leadership. You need to tell your church leadership. It doesn't mean we're going to, plaster everybody on the front cover of the bulletin, but the leadership needs to know what's going on because they can't help if they don't know. So caregivers oftentimes pour from an empty cup. So this is one of my, her name was Alma. She was 96 years old. She's a friend of mine, Deb's mom. And Deb was in the same situation. She was the primary caregiver. She'd taken care of her husband. He passed away from cancer. Now she was taking care of her mom. And there was a sister in town, lived 2 blocks away, and was not helping, right? And so lots of family dynamics and drama. And what we really worked on was showing Deb that she needed to steward that part of her. She has to take ownership of her sphere. Mom was living with her. And so if her sibling's not going to help, we have to find other solutions to get help in the house, right? And so not only the skills, the actual skills, one of the things that I did with Mitch, Patty was trying to walk out the door, and we got a shower curtain with a bookcase on and put it over the door so that she would see a bookcase, and then she'd turn around and walk away. The skills, the actual skills. I don't know if he still has that shower curtain, but anyway. We need the skills, what to say, when to say it, how not to lie, how to do those things. We need the resources, the finances, the how to protect my assets for Medicaid, how do I pay for caregivers, who are the humans in the loop, right? Who are the humans that can help, as well as stewarding myself. So those 3 things are the things that we need to steward on this journey. So stewardship means, faithful caregiving doesn't mean just pouring yourself out. It means you have to steward your health, your relationships, your walk with God, so you can love well without burning out. So you guys who are here, who are not primary caregivers, this is how you help the primary caregiver. Right? The boots on the ground, tangible stuff. Caregivers, people who are in the trenches, will not be able to tell you what they need. You will go up to them and say, just let me know what you need. I'm happy to help. And they'll stand there. And they will not be able to tell you what to do, because they are overwhelmed, right? So when you're the caregiver, how do we solve that problem? You take a piece of paper, you write on it what help you need. Think to yourself, yard work, cleaning, coming and doing the laundry, sitting with my person so I can go out for a bit, right? Whatever it is, keep it in your wallet, keep it in your purse. When somebody at church comes to you and says, let me know what I can do, you whip that sucker out and say, which one of these? What can you do? Let's put it on the calendar. Now. I'm not kidding. It's tangible. These are tangible things that we can do. So when you have these family caregivers in the community, like things that the church can do, things that you guys can do for your family caregivers is, oftentimes in the previous presentation, there was a lady who said, but when people ask me I'm doing fine, I'm like, then you say to them, I'm fine right now. I would like you to bring me one meal that I can put in the freezer for the day I'm not. Right? Meal trains. You guys have a big church, right? Meal trains for caregivers. Not 1 week, not 2 weeks, not 6 weeks, months. Caregiving is a marathon, it is not a sprint. It has periods of sprints. That's usually when somebody's in the hospital. Everybody knows then, right? So we all come around. We help that person in the moment, but then that person is continuing on in that caregiving role. They have changed roles. They are now helping do things they didn't do before, right? It may be a wife who never needed to mow the lawn. That will be me. So the truth of the matter is stewardship means caring for what God has entrusted to you. It's not just keep giving. It's about managing this with wisdom. Moses was also warned not to carry everything alone, right? Wisdom means knowing that the load is heavy and it needs to be shared. Exodus 18, verse 17 and 18 said, "What you are doing is not good. You and the people with you will wear yourselves out, for the thing is too heavy for you. You cannot do it alone." Caregiving is not a solo task. Caregiving takes multiple people. All right, so I teach a very easy boots on the ground method. I call it the 4D method. There's certain things that we, by virtue of our role, have to do. If I am a spouse of somebody living with dementia, intimacy is only mine to do. Nobody else gets to do that job, right? If I'm the adult daughter and I am the decision maker, I have the healthcare power of attorney or the durable power of attorney for financial decisions. That is not a task or a role I can give anybody else to do. That is mine. There's certain things that we have to do because of the role that we're in. There's certain things that can be delayed, and they may be delayed for years, okay? For everything there's a season, and there's a time and time for every matter under the sun or under the heavens, right? The next thing is certain things can be delegated. Most of us don't like to delegate. I'll never forget, there was a guy in a presentation that I did. He was sitting there, his granddaughter was there, and his daughter were there, and they're like, he can't do this. He's like, I'm the only one that can take care of her. I'm like, no. There's certain things that we can delegate. So what can other people do for you? Tommy, who's in our community, he is a grandson, and his one grandmother, who doesn't have dementia, wants him to come mow the lawn for her, and then he doesn't have time to go spend with his other grandmother who does have dementia. But his grandmother would, I'm like, get somebody to mow her lawn. And he's like, she won't let me. He told me this months later. He's like, she wouldn't let me get anybody else to mow the lawn. So I came up with another solution. I'm like, okay, what? He's like, somebody's mowing my lawn. So I can mow her lawn and not take the time to mow my lawn so I can be with my other grandmother. There was a very wise way of stewarding, taking care of this grandmother, who he'd always mowed her lawn, but he didn't have time to do both. He's paying somebody to mow his lawn, and he goes and visits his other grandmother. So he can spend time with her, because that's what it's about. And delete. What can you take off of your plate entirely? I love hospitality. I will do hospitality all day long, every day. And I'm in a season where, as long as I believe I should be doing hospitality, because I love doing hospitality, I feel it's a biblical principle, then I feel guilty because I'm not doing it. But I'm in a season in my life when I cannot do it. So I have deleted that entirely out of my brain. I'm like, I don't feel guilty right now for not doing hospitality, because the Lord has put me in a season where I'm a primary caregiver at home of my dad, now living with him, and he's an atheist. So it's not super easy to bring the church over to lunch. It's his house, right? So I have to find things that I can take off of me and not feel guilty about it. We attend two churches. One's big and one's small. Both have the exact same problem. Not enough nursery duty people, right? I'm a warm body. And I'm like, I'm not doing nursery duty. I don't have the bandwidth. And I know it, and I say it out loud, and when they ask me, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do nursery duty. I'm a primary caregiver at home. I can't come in here now and take care of other people's kids. They will not make it out alive. I deleted that off of my list, and I had to take it off, or else I feel bad. But it's a season in my life. This season is going to end. It will end. It does end. Alrighty, so that's why I had those up there. But since most of you are not primary caregivers, I'm not going to do this unless you guys want to. What kind of things do you think you could, as the people who are supporting people who are caregivers, what kind of things do you think you can help them delegate? What are tasks that the church can help for that person who's the caregiver, actually delegate it for them? We'll do it that way around.
Take their car when your car needs work.
That is a very good idea. Take their car when their car needs work. So you take their car in, you sit with the car, you give that person a break that they don't have to do it. Yep, those are things. In the previous group, somebody said the finances. I have to do the finances, and I'm like, no, you don't. They're fiscal money managers. They're people who can do your finances for you.
I was going to say, my mother-in-law asked the church to have men sit with my father-in-law and she was still working. So that was a great question.
Yep.
Because we were all working too.
Because everybody was working. Yep. So coming in and sitting with the person, right? This takes some logistics. It does take planning, but larger churches have more ability to do this and help that person and actually set it on a calendar. So here's one of the biggest challenges with caregiving is by the time we figure out it's too much and we're burnt out, it's too late. We need to be starting to put these strategies in place right at the beginning. If you're a primary caregiver and you're living with somebody, you should be having time to yourself once a week when you're not on duty. It doesn't need to be 7 hours. It can be 3. It can be an hour, right? But we have to build these things in early and often, because what happens is people wait until the end and then it's too late. They're already burning out. Right? So those were two very good tangible examples. What might be something that we can delay? A task that we can delay? All you all remember my story about the papers? Guess what? Those papers are going to be there when my dad passes away. I don't have to do that now. I don't have to sort through the house. I don't have to do certain things. I can delay certain things until I'm done with caregiving. You put your hand up? Somebody put their hand up back there?
Yeah, I was going to share something about knowing that somebody's unable to, well, we had an incident take place about a week ago when a man, Dave Davis, many of you know him, he fell in our Sunday school class. And it wound up that the ambulance came over, picked him up, put him in the hospital. He wound up having a total hip replacement.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that he was really concerned about was his wife.
Mm-hmm.
And he was concerned about her being all alone in the house and then going and taking a shower. And I said, what is your concern about her? He said, well, I'm afraid that she's going to fall.
Mm-hmm.
So she needs some kind of a
Grab bar?
pardon me?
A grab bar?
A grab bar. And I said, let me take care of that.
Yep.
So I wound up going to Home Depot got one, but we were on the process of traveling out of town, so I asked one of our men over here, Paul Nottingham, says, would you mind putting this together, even if I've given you that? He said, yes.
Yep.
And so that was such a relief on the part of
Him.
Dave Davis.
Yep. You
And
took that
was-
burden off of him.
I took the burden off.
You took the burden off of him because what that tells you is he is a caregiver and he doesn't know it. Okay?
But she was so appreciative.
But what I'm challenging you guys with is there are people in the church who are caregivers that if you were to ask them if they're a caregiver, they're going to tell you no, because they don't even recognize that they're a caregiver. There are adult children in your church who think that their parents are independent because they live in their own home. Just because a human is living in their own home does not mean they're independent. If you're calling them to check up on them, they're not independent. If you are worried about whether they're eating or grocery shopping, or if the laundry is going to get done, or if they've taken a shower, or if they've taken their medication, even if you're not there with your eyes on them, you're a caregiver. If you're calling them because you want to make sure that they're not lonely, you're a caregiver. People do not even recognize that they are caregivers. Mom who's just come home from the hospital, we call her a mom. We call her a parent. Guess what? She's a caregiver. That baby cannot stay alive without her help. That is a caregiver. If we are doing things to help another human, not because it's our normal role and responsibility, like husbands and wives, we divide and conquer, right? For 32 years, I've done the finances. My husband is perfectly capable of doing the finances. If I can't do the finances and he starts doing the finances because I can't do it anymore, he just turned into my caregiver. Right? I'm not capable of doing the lawn. I will be hiring somebody. But if I had to, I could. Like I could push a lawnmower, right? If my husband cannot do it and I have to take over the tasks that he's always historically done, I have become his caregiver, even though I'm his spouse, right? So do, delay, delete, and delegate. So these are things, and that list that you could put in your purse, I want you to put a purse. So most tasks that people tell me are the hardest, or the things that we believe we have to do. We believe that no one else can do. There's really only a handful of tasks that cannot be delegated or delayed. And then some that we can delete for a season, right? But intimacy, that's nobody else's job but the spouse's, right? So those are like legitimately the roles and responsibilities that I want people to think of, that level of nobody else can be my mom's daughter. She passed away in February. My dad's daughter than me. Nobody else can be his daughter, only me. Nobody else can be their spouse, only the spouse. Those are the types of things that I want you to consider. Alrighty. So, if you focus on the problem, you cannot see the solution. Never focus on the problem. How many of you guys have ever driven in a car that looked like that? All right, what happens if you're looking at the dirt? You don't see where you're going. This is also a Patch Adams quote. All of the quotes were Patch Adams, by the way. The last point that we're going to look at is the temptation to believe that we're just here to survive caregiving. So how do we know that we might be making that? Is we feel, oh, wrong point. I'm almost done. Alrighty. I'm just surviving one day at a time, or there is no purpose to this. I hear a lot of people say there's no purpose to this. Or I don't see how God could use this for good. So let me tell you about Lisa real quick. I do once a month on the podcast. I have a thing that I call Ask the Dementia Coach. And so real people living all over the country and some people living all over the world will sign up to come, and then I will do a coaching, like a free coaching. The trade-off is that human has agreed for that to go out on the podcast, right? So it took a while to get this up and going, but now people will sign up, and when they show up, they stay. They stay for over 2 hours and just listen to everybody else, their questions. And so this woman literally called me from a grocery store. She was in Sam's. And she started crying in Sam's because she was so overwhelmed and did not know what to do. And what's really interesting about her is she is just surviving. But she's not ready to take action yet. So she'll come to these Ask the Dementia Coach sessions. I kid you not. I literally tell her the same thing every single time. Her mom lives with her. She feels resentment that she got married young, she raised her kids, and now I'm taking care of my mom, and I can't go out and do things with my husband, right? So she's not accepted the calling of being a caregiver. And then every single time I'm like, you need help in the house. And I tell her literally every single time the exact same stuff. And she still has not taken action. Because she's not ready. She's not ready to take action. And so she is going to have a very, very different outcome of her journey than other people who start to take action earlier on. So she literally is just surviving. But caregiving is not a detour, right? This is a part of your journey. Your dad, Miss Lisa, who got remarried, it is for his good and for God's glory that he is now her caregiver, right? And it's not a detour out of his life. It's not a detour for me out of my life. It's a season, and I can choose how I want to steward this season, right? So in God's hands, this becomes a part of your sanctification process. Every single person who is a Christian, every single person who is a believer should be different every morning and every evening when they go to bed. They should be more and more like Christ every single day. Every single step we take, we should get to be more like him. And this journey is a part of your sanctification. It's a part of the sanctification of the whole church. Yes, there is suffering in dementia, for sure. But it's the curse that we see, right? And everything we go through in this journey is for my good and for God's glory, right?
You mentioned earlier that you can walk in a room and you can tell instantly if the patient.
I said within 3 minutes.
Within 3 minutes.
Uh-huh.
What can you share?
Sure. I have who here has heard of Dave Ramsey? Best question ever. When I'd go into patients' houses and the hospital, I would go in and inevitably, what do people say? How are you? Right? And my response every single time is better than I deserve. And within 3 minutes, based off of that response, I kid you not, I've done this thousands of times. There are only 2 responses. I've consistently only gotten 2 responses. Amen, yes, you're right. You're better than you deserve. Immediately I know where that person is. Or, oh no, you deserve the best. It's like single-handedly, like the dividing line. It was a great question. Yeah. So, better than I deserve. Alrighty, so the truth, God uses trials to grow our Christ-like character. Suffering is not wasted when it's entrusted to Him. We rejoice in our suffering, knowing that suffering produces endurance. Endurance produces character, and character produces hope. Because of everyone in the world who is helping, struggling, living with, contending with people living with dementia, we are the ones that have hope. We have hope. We have hope for eternity. And this was the hardest thing for me to kind of learn and figure out. Not only is it good for me, who is the caregiver, helping that person living with dementia, here's the kicker. Guess what? Living with dementia is good for that person. It is a part of their sanctification process. And here's the other thing, right? Even all the way through to the end stages of dementia, a person living with dementia still knows love, still feels when people care for them, right? And God is upholding their faith. If they are a believer, God upholds their faith, because faith is not of me, right? It's not of works. So that person going through it, that journey is for their good too, and for God's glory. And it's hard to see it in that lens, but once you start to see it in that lens, it can make a tremendous difference. Tremendous difference. Caregiving becomes part of our sanctification. Count it all joy when you meet trials of various kinds, for I know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness, right? Alrighty, so when you who are caregivers are done with your caregiving journey, how do you want to look more like Jesus at the end of this? I have a woman who joined my community recently. When I sat and met with her, I asked her, I said, what do you want this journey to look like when you're done? She said, I want to have grown in the fruit of the Spirit. Guess what? That's a person I can help. Because we can grow in the fruit of the Spirit. Are we going to be perfect? No. Do we make a lot of mistakes? Yes. But we can grow. We should not go to bed the same every single day. We should be growing more and more in Christ every single day. So in what specific ways is God shaping me into Christ-likeness through this season? Alrighty. And this is the other hard part. We can be grateful for this journey. We can be grateful for this journey. We don't have to like the wages of sin. We should not like the wages of sin. Right? The wages of sin is death. We should not like that. And at the same time, God is redeeming this for our good and His glory. Alrighty. We need each other deeper than anyone dares to admit, even to themselves. Caregiving is not a solo journey. Alrighty. What has been most valuable so far? Now I'm going to make you guys talk to me. All right. What has been valuable? Yes, ma'am.
It should have been obvious, but to tell the truth, there are ways you can do it. So many times do you desire her, will you just agree with them?
Well, I will tell you, I actually had to confess this publicly on a podcast. I did the same thing because it is so pervasive. So here's the reality, or the biggest challenge, right? We Christians inadvertently believe that the medical system is neutral. It ain't. It is 100% secular. Are there Christian caregivers in the healthcare system? Absolutely. But does it come from a Christian worldview? No. So what is the Hippocratic Oath? Do no harm, right? And if you end up in the hospital and you're at the end stages of your life and towards the end of your journey, what are doctors tasked to do? What are they taught? What is their view? What is their mindset? Do not let you die. That is what the healthcare system is set up for. It's better, but in essence, when you go to the ER and you've been in a car crash, what are you there for?
Keep you alive.
To keep you alive. To not let you die. That is what the healthcare system is trying to do.
Now there has to be a discussion about when they're going to unplug you.
So let me tell you a quick story. So this will kind of maybe tie it all in a bow for you. My mom passed away on the 27th of February this year. She had this massive stroke at 42. I was 19 years old, right? We're from South Africa. We have a terrible sense of humor. We do. We have what's called gallows humor. Okay, so the joke has always been, I'll pull the plug, I'll trip over the cord, right? Okay, so my mom had a severe esophageal stricture. It was 4 centimeters long. It's about that long. The top part of it was 7 millimeters, which is smaller than the size of a straw, the diameter of a straw. The bottom part of it was 4 millimeters, so 7, 4 centimeters. Nothing was going in. And we were in a race to try to keep her alive, right? And so she had 4 EGDs back to back. The third one, she had a wind up. I know now it was her heart. After she came out of the third procedure, she went unresponsive. I was there. I'm a healthcare provider. I'm like, Mom. They started running. They were getting ready to code her. She came back. We thought she had another stroke. She got to spend a very expensive night overnight in the Bon Secours East Side, downtown, sorry. 2 weeks later, 10 days later, they did, so this was the 4th EGD. And I'm sitting in the waiting room, and the overhead page, code blue EGD. And because I had practiced, and because I had thought through, I knew, number one, I knew it was my mom, and number 2, I knew she wasn't going to make it, and number 3, I knew what I needed to do. And so they were able to resuscitate her, keep her, bring her back long enough for me to get my dad to come say goodbye. And by the time my dad came in, I'd had the conversation with the doctor, and I'm like, she did not want this. She's a DNR. Take the tube out. And 20 minutes later, she passed away. So, yeah. The moral of that story was, you have to know what you're going to do before you get there. You have to know if Dad dies, right, who's going to take care of her? If things go on too long and he loses his health, what are we going to do? You have to think ahead. You have to plan ahead. And it is possible to plan ahead. It's possible. Like, did I know exactly that it was going to end up like that? No. And I can tell you that because I thought through all of these iterations, I knew the moment it happened exactly what my mom wanted. And we did it. So, all right, questions? On that cheerful note, right? Yes, ma'am.
This is a suggestion, I guess. we found it helpful to find books written by people who have experienced that caregiving, dementia caregiving. And one that we read recently was called Into the Shadows, written by a professor. His name is Robert DeHaan, and he's a believer. And I loved that there was constant scripture and advice from God of how to deal with things that came along. And as a member of a church body, I loved how their believer friends came in and supported them through the journey. So if it's something that you like to do, to read, I was able to find it online.
Into the Shadow?
Into the Shadows by Robert DeHaan.
Robert DeHaan.
Right. It's an old book, so it's cheap paperback.
I like that. Yeah, that's a good suggestion. The biggest challenges, most specifically dementia caregiving books, are written from a secular humanistic perspective. And another thing is, and this has been really something that's been weighing heavily on me. For 32 years, I was a believer in the healthcare system. The healthcare system has believers in. The problem in the healthcare system as a believer is your faith is a Band-Aid on the healthcare system. You can come into the room, you can identify somebody as a fellow believer, you can help them with the process and provide them comfort in a way that a non-believing caregiver cannot, and it's still a secular way of doing it because it's not based on what the Lord actually says about dementia caregiving, right? Dignity, order, and truth. That's a biblical way of looking at dementia. The person is created in the image of God, and because of that they have dignity. End of discussion. It's not what I think that makes me. Order. God is a God of order. There is order in dementia. There is. I can show it to you. It wasn't set up for this presentation, but I can show you the order in dementia. And thirdly, truth. God is a God of truth. We do not need to lie. It is relationship first, relationship centered. My relationship with the Lord, and then my relationship with the person I'm caring for. And that is, so what happened to me after I stopped working in the healthcare system is now the medical model is a Band-Aid on a Christian worldview of dementia. Lots of books written about dementia and dementia caregiving is still coming through a medical model in the techniques and things like that. And what I'm really trying to do is put together a Christian model for caregiving. So you guys get some of the early iteration of this. All right. Any more questions? Tough crowd, guys. Hey, got you to laugh.